Say, I'm back. Welcome to the latest episode of Mystery Unsolved. I am, of course, your host, Justin Bienvenu. And yes, it has been quite a while. I would apologize, but no one really watches this. For those that do actually watch it, thank you for coming back. I do apologize for the slight hiatus as I've had a lot of personal issues going on. And I've been working, so it's conflicts with the schedule, so I haven't really been able to get on. Also, the last 2 weeks just haven't really been up to it. But I am back, and we are doing this. Mystery Unsolved is back. Brand new season. We're going to do a double feature tonight. I'm going to get through this one, probably give my tablet a little charge, then I'm back at it again. First episode of Mystery Unsolved tonight is going to be on the MV Joyita. What is that? Why are we talking about it? That's what we're here for. Without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the disappearance of the MV Joyita. First things first, what is the MV Joyita, or what was it rather? Well, if it sounds like it's a ship, you'd be right. The MV Joyita was an American merchant vessel from which 25 passengers and crew mysteriously disappeared in the South Pacific in October of 1955. She was found adrift with no one aboard. That's right, we got a ghost ship on our hands, a mystery ship that just disappeared. I don't think we've had many of these. I don't think there's been a ship. I might have to go back and check my own records of episodes. All right, I'll give you a little rundown of the ship. I apologize if I cough. I just finished eating pizza. All right. It was acquired in October of 1941. It was in service in 1941. It was out of service by 1948. So whatever it was doing after 1948 and in 1955 was obviously off the record. All right, it just gives you a bunch of owners. The type of ship that it was a luxury yacht, a yacht charter, and a merchant vessel. So gives you a nice little idea of what the ship was. Here we go. We don't need to know the dimensions of the ship. You know it's a ship. That's all you really need to know. The ship was in very poor condition, with corroded pipes and a radio which, while functional, had a range of only about 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers, because of faulty wiring. However, the extreme buoyancy of the ship made sinking nearly impossible. Investigators were puzzled as to why the crew had not remained on board and waited for help. That is a good question. All right, that's a history of it. Let's go with the disappearance, right? That's why we're here. We know it's a ship. We know it's made of wood. That's all. It's all fun and dandy. Again, I apologize. I should have just waited a little bit, but I had already waited, and I said 6 o'clock. So, about 5 a.m. on October 3rd, 1955, Joyita left Samoa's Apia harbor, bound for the Tokelau Islands. The words, I swear. About 270 miles away. The boat had been given schedule to leave on the noon tide the previous day, but her departure was delayed because her port engine clutch failed. Joyita eventually left Samoa on one engine. Oh boy. She was carrying 16 crew members and 9 passengers, including a government official, a doctor, Alfred Andy Dennis Parsons, a World War II surgeon on his way to perform an amputation, a corpora buyer, and 2 children. Now that's a manifest of every single person on that ship and their importance to it. And 2 children. Because that's their importance, their children. Her cargo consisted of medical supplies, timber, 80 empty 45-gallon oil drums, and various foodstuffs. Foodstuffs? No idea what just happened. Sorry about that. That was really weird. The voyage was expected to take between 41 and 48 hours. Joyita was scheduled to arrive in the Tokelau Islands on October 5th. On October 6th, a message from Fakoo Port, I apologize if I butchered these words, Port reported that the ship was overdue. No ship or land-based operator reported receiving a distress signal from the crew. A search and rescue mission was launched, and from October 6th to the 12th, Sunderlands of the Royal New Zealand Air Force covered a probability area of nearly 100,000 square miles of ocean, but no sign of Joyita or any of her passengers or crew was found. So, didn't reach its destination. The people at the destination were like, hey, these people aren't here yet. Where did they go? 5 weeks later, on November 10th, Gerald Douglas, captain of the merchant ship Tuvalu, en route to Suva to Funafuti, Jesus Christ, the names of these islands, sighted Joyita more than 600 miles west from her scheduled route, drifting north of Vanua Levu. Vanua Levu. That is a cool name of an island. The ship was partly submerged, enlisting heavily. Her port deck rail was awash, and there was no trace of any of the passengers or crew. That's like the third time they've been like, hey, there's no passengers or crew. Are you getting this? There's no passengers or crew. 4 tons of cargo were also missing. Just gonna move my beard to that one. 4 tons. If that's not worthy of a beard shake, I don't know what is. The recovery party noted that the radio was discovered tuned to 2182 kilohertz, the International Marine Radio Telephone Distress Channel. Okay, so now we got a little bit of info here, a little bit of intel. All right. Barnacle growth high above the usual waterline on the port side showed that Joyita had been listing heavily for some time. There was some damage to the superstructure. Her flying bridge had been smashed away, and the deck house had light damage and broken windows. A canvas awning had been rigged on top of the deck house behind the bridge. Joyita carried a dinghy and 3 Carly life rafts, but were all missing. She did not carry enough life jackets for everyone on board. Oh boy, here we go. Let me read that last one again if it sounds familiar. She did not carry enough life jackets for everyone on board. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, that's right, the Titanic. For those that have been living under a rock about the Titanic, when I say it didn't have enough lifeboats, it did not have enough lifeboats at all. They didn't even have the small amount requirement. Never mind a regular requirement. But that's the Titanic. We're talking about the MV Joyita. But like them, not enough life rafts, not enough life jackets. Which is kind of weird considering this boat's way smaller and it was way less people. Like, what are we doing here? The starboard engine was found to be covered by mattresses. Wow. While the port's engine clutch was still partially disassembled, showing that the vessel was still running on only one engine. The starter motor of the starboard auxiliary engine was also missing, indicating that this engine was unserviceable. I don't know jack squat about a boat, but I do know that it probably needs more than one engine to really run. And the fact that it kind of seems like to me that they knew they needed more than one engine to really go out to do what they needed to do. And the fact that it sounds like the engine broke down and they're all like, wait, what happened to all these people? Why did they only have one engine? An auxiliary pump had been rigged in the engine room, mounted on a plank of wood slung between the main engines. However, it had not been connected. I don't know. Now it sounds like these people sabotaged themselves. I don't know. The radio on board was tuned to the International Distress Channel, but when the equipment was inspected, a break was found in the cable between the set and the aerial. The cable had been painted over, obscuring the break. This would have limited the range of the radio to about 2 miles, which we already knew, but now we know why it was set the way it was. The electric clocks on board, wired to the vessel's generator, had stopped at 10:25, and the switches for the cabin lighting and navigation lights were on, implying that whatever had occurred happened at night. The ship's logbook, sextant, mechanical chronometer, chronometer, and other navigational equipment, as well as the firearms Miller kept in the boat were missing. A doctor's bag was found on deck containing a stethoscope, a scalpel, and 4 lengths of blood-stained bandages. This just sounds like a total mess. Everything that should be working and in functioning order isn't. Anything that's needed to help out the ship, that's needed on a ship, is missing. It's just all intricately convenient. There was still fuel in Joyita's tanks from the amount used. It was calculated she made some 243 miles before the vessel was abandoned, probably within 50 miles of Tokila. The leak had probably started after 9 p.m. on the second night of the voyage, with 9 hours of darkness ahead. Okay, before we go any further, it is worth noting, remember I said earlier, they only had one engine. I'm going to assume the people on board, the captain preferably, since he's the one that's maintaining the damn ship, knew how much time he had. Didn't tell anybody else. And if he did, they didn't listen. Nighttime comes, the ship starts getting a little wonky. Maybe it even shuts down partially. So then he's like, we have to abandon ship. They're like, what are you talking about? We have to abandon ship. Although I don't see why would you abandon ship? Like, even if the ship shuts off, it's not going to sink. Remember they said it was literally impossible to sink. Then again, they said that about the Titanic, and here we are 100 plus years later talking about it. So, although Joyita was found with her bilges and lower decks flooded. Oh, here we go. Her hull was sound, and once the water was pumped from her hull, she floated on a stable and even keel and was easily towed into harbor at Suva. When at her mooring there, investigators heard the sound of water entering the vessel. It was found that a pipe in the raw water circuit of the port auxiliary's engine cooling system had failed due to galvanic corrosion, allowing water into the bilges. That's never good. So, okay, again, I know nothing about boats. If water gets into the bottom of a boat, we know this. It's gonna sink, right? In this instance, I don't know the size of this boat. That probably would have been. Now I now I realize the dimensions of the boat at the beginning probably would have been helpful here. Might be a good sized boat, but this is saying that water got into the raw water circuit of the auxiliary engine's cooling system. The cooling system, and it's the engine. That means it was flooded, completely flooded, to the point where it might be a bigger issue than you thought originally going forward. So that's why that's why there's no one on the boat. Because the captain was probably like, okay, water got into the bottom of the boat, but it also got into one of the engines in the cooling system, which means that this ship could catch on fire. We better go now. That's a pretty good assumption, I think. The first the crew would have known about the leak was when the water rose above the engine room floorboards, by which time it would have been nearly impossible to locate the leak. Also, the bilge pumps were not fitted with strainers. Of course they weren't, because nothing on this boat is working properly. Had become clogged with debris, meaning it would have been very difficult to pump the water out. Okay, whoever the captain was, or whoever the maintenance guy was for this boat, shame on you. Shame on you. Like, why wouldn't you investigate the boat? Why wouldn't you go inside, do an inspection, even open up the boat's ports or whatever, look at the engines, whatever you possibly could, and say, hey, okay, this is great. But no. Did they learn nothing from the Titanic? This sounds like literally like it could be a sequel to the Titanic. Except it didn't sink. Oh, all right. Hypotheses, as it says. Now we got some theories as to what happened to the MV Joyita. What happened to the crew? What happened to the damn vessel and why it stopped? Although I think we kind of know why it stopped anyway. Joyita is sometimes referred to as the Mary Celeste of the South Pacific, and has been subject of several books and documentaries offering explanations that range from rational and conventional to supernatural and paranormal. Numerous hypotheses have disappearance of the Joyita's crew and passengers have been advanced. Many were circulated at the time of the event, and several others have been put forward since. Given the fact that the hull of the... What the heck? Given the fact that the hull of the Joyita was sound and her design made her almost unsinkable, a main concern of investigators was determining why the passengers and crew did not stay on board if the events were simply triggered by the flooding in the engine room. Didn't I say that? I always manage to say something during a live video, and sure enough, it gets proven. I said that? If the boat wasn't sinkable, why did they all abandon? Unless, which I think, it could have caught fire. Maybe that was the concern. Obviously, if something might catch fire, you might want to abandon ship. Just saying. Injured captain hypothesis. Ooh, okay, I'm just going to read this and then draw the conclusion after. Captain Miller. Did we know his name before? I don't remember coming across his name, but his name's Captain Miller. Captain Miller should have been well aware of the vessel's ability to stay afloat, leading some to speculate that he had died or become incapacitated for some reason. Parentheses, someone on board was injured, hence the blood-stained bandages. Ah, that's where those came from. Without him to reassure the other people on board, they may have panicked when Joyita began to flood and taken to the life rafts. However, this in itself would not account for the missing cargo and equipment, unless the vessel had been found abandoned had her cargo been removed. True. A friend of Miller, Captain S.B. Brown, was convinced that Miller would never have left Joyita alive, given his knowledge of her construction. He was aware of tension between Miller and his American first mate, Chuck Simpson, and felt that their mutual dislike came to blows and both men fell overboard or were severely injured in a struggle. I don't know why it's doing that. I apologize. This left the vessel without an experienced seaman and would explain why those remaining on board would panic when the ship began to flood. That's true. If the captain's not aboard the ship, And they're all like, what do we do? We should probably just abandon ship as well. Japanese involvement in other hypotheses. There we go. The Fiji Times and Herald quoted at the time from an impeccable source to the effect that Joyita had passed through a fleet of Japanese fishing boats during its trip and had observed something the Japanese did not want them to see. Ooh, that's a that's a juicy theory right there. The Daily Telegraph in London hypothesized that some still active Japanese forces from World War II were to blame for the disappearances, operating from an isolated island base. There was still strong anti-Japanese sentiment in the parts of the Pacific, and in Fiji, there was specific resentment of Japanese being allowed to operate fishing fleets in local waters. Such theories suddenly gained credence when men clearing Joyita found knives stamped "Made in Japan." However, tests on the knives proved negative, and it turned out that the knives were old and broken, quite possibly left on board from when Joyita was used for fishing in the late 1940s. Also, there was a proposition that the vessel's occupants were kidnapped by a Soviet submarine, with the world at the time in the midst of the growing Cold War. Early reports that the Joyita had been involved in a collision that led to speculation that she had been rammed, and that the modern sea pirates attacked the vessel, killing the 25 passengers and crew, and then cast their bodies into the ocean and stole the missing 4 tons of cargo. Jesus, these all sound really good. Insurance fraud. It was also revealed that Miller had amassed a large debt after a series of unsuccessful fishing trips on the Joyita. However, it would have been difficult to see the events surrounding Joyita as insurance fraud, given that no seacocks were found open, and the ship would all be almost impossible to scuttle. Also, Miller was relying on Joyita being chartered for regular runs between Samoa and Takalu. These government charters would have quickly cleared his debts. All right, so why did they even put that? If because apparently it was an idea. Mutiny. How many more do we have here? Okay, this is the last one. Mutiny. Mutiny on the Joyita. A subsequent owner of Joyita, British author Robin Mogham, spent many years investigating the vessel's past and published his findings as the Joyita Mystery in 1962. Mogham agreed that the event was started by a flooding from the broken cooling pipe and the failure in the pumps, which we remember. The mattresses found covering the stampboard engine were used in either an attempt to stem the leak or to protect the electrical switchboard from spray kicked up by the engine's flywheel as the water level rose. Remember I said that? They must have been afraid of a fire. So by covering the pipes, that way when the water starts to go up, they're like, okay, we have a little bit of time here by covering this. But the minute the water hits that electrical pipe, all bets are off. At the same time, Joyita encountered increasingly heavy swells and squally weather. Squally weather. I don't think I've ever seen that word before. Captain Miller, knowing Joyita to be unsinkable and desperate to reach his destination to clear his debt, pressed on. However, Simpson and possibly other crew members demanded that he turn back. This effectively led to mutiny, and Miller and the crew struggled, during which Miller sustained a serious injury, the bloody bandages. By now, the ship was entering heavier weather, with winds around 40 miles per hour, and with one engine in flooded bilge, was beginning to labor. The flooding in the engine room would eventually cause the starboard engine to fail, also cutting all the vessel's electrical power. Simpson was now in control and made the decision to abandon ship, taking the navigational equipment, logbook, and supplies, as well as the injured Miller, with them. It seems unlikely that Simpson would choose to abandon a floating ship to take small open rafts in the Pacific Ocean. Mogham proposed that they sighted a nearby island or reef and tried to reach it, but in the strong winds and seas, the rafts were carried out to sea, leaving Joyita drifting and empty. The damage to the lightly built superstructure was caused by wave damage, and while the vessel was drifting in the heavy seas. I like that one. I think that's the best one. That one's got that, like, a guy came to that theory. That was Mogham. I think that's actually totally I'm going to go with that one first. I think it was a mutiny. Simpson and the rest of the crew mutinied against Miller. But rather than just like throw his ass overboard, they're like, we're all going to go. We don't know what you have planned for us on this ship. We shouldn't stay, but we're all getting off the ship. Every single one of us. We're taking your ass with us. So I would say mutiny was first. Japanese involved. I like the Japanese one. That one's really good. And then I would say the injured captain one is third. And then last, of course, insurance fraud, because they pretty much proved that it wasn't. If you'd like to know what happened to the Joyita after 1955, I'll give you a little brief rundown here. It was auctioned off by her owners. Oh, David Simpson, no relation to Chuck Simpson. They pretty much sold it, and it passed hands. And now I bet it's stationed. Yeah, it's pretty much just stationed somewhere. That's usually what happens with ships. And then it gives you all the people that were on board. The oldest person was the captain. He was 41. Oh, scratch that. Super cargo guy. Nope. The cargo guy is 66 and 44. The captain. Yeah. The youngest person was a little girl. She was 3. And there was also an 11-year-old on ship. That was the adopted son of someone from the island. All right. I'm going to bring it back just for this. What do you think happened to the MV Joyita? Do you think it was mutiny? The Japanese? Insurance fraud? Or maybe the captain got injured? Whichever. Do let me know in the comments. Reach out. You won't. I'll ask anyway. I do apologize if it timed out and you didn't see me. It's not supposed to time out during a live video, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. But anyways, you got the gist of it. This has been the mystery unsolved, the disappearance of the MV Joyita. Stay tuned in a little bit, and by a little bit I mean about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. I just gotta let this baby charge. And then we will be talking about the double feature of Mystery Unsolved. And that episode will be on the disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon. So stay tuned for that in about 20 minutes to a half an hour. For Mystery Unsolved, this has been Justin Bienvenue, signing off for now.